fit these fixtures in there.
Only if it's time, right? Only if it's, you know, just when it's coming back into style too.
Yeah, I'm sure, well, you didn't get to see the brown tile that was on the wall too. I mean, it went great together.
Did you lose your name? Lose your identity?
Evelyn Jeff.
When Jenny gets here, I'm gonna report it.
Meeting. Hey, Martin. Yes. There's still an error in that development agreement. Yeah. But we'll just, I think we approve it, and then Randy can sign it tomorrow or the next day or something. It's just a 2A versus 2B. He calls it out as 2B, and it should say 2A on the stormwater.
We could probably just change it by a motion.
Yeah.
Just have them say, make sure it reflects 2A instead of 2B or whatever.
Yeah. I'll just pull it up here.
I still do it. I've been here 14 years.
I have a bone pick with you.
Welcome, Deb. Yes.
No. No, I was gonna call you today. I saw the estimated total for the splash pad.
Yeah.
Do you remember our first meeting?
Yes, I
Okay.
know.
Okay.
Come on now.
You don't have to say Jeff is right, do you? Because that'd be really bad. Yeah.
I would just wants to hear someone say Jeff was right.
I get you.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be on. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, I have to call Deb now. They're just expensive. It's just expensive to do. Okay. Yeah, they were upstairs.
Fort Jackson, South Carolina, 3 months, 3 weeks in August.
Yes, it is, Deb.
Okay, welcome.
I think, Martin, I'll take the minutes separate because there's some new members were there somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
By design, I think. That Derek went through the same thing. Talking about training down in parts of the country. Okinawa, I was there for 2 weeks, and in August was miserable. It was like 115 degrees. Jungle climate there. His son was training in Fort Knox for 100 degree heat in the hazmat suits. Yeah. It always seemed like the gas mask training. They would do it on the hottest day. Yeah, right. Every time. They're ripping in there. Here, leave this on for 4 hours.
You got everything solved for tonight, Randy?
200 degrees up today. Yeah. Push-ups. Oh, yeah, right.
I'm still gonna do it.
Add a little fuel to the fire.
Yeah. See where it goes.
Otherwise, just want to do the next step, we'll start pushing it, since it's raining.
Send it back.
No,
Oh, take the planning commission.
you're already soaking wet
On the
anyway.
timing, I read something about that.
Yep.
I wrote back to somebody today, one of the guys that we've been working with on stuff, and I just said, just so you know, I said, I saw some stuff on Facebook and everything, or I just saw his explanation was there, and I just said, please note that Grace Day Events has been with us. Oh my God,
No, I liked it.
always done a phenomenal job.
I was there for 2 weeks.
How are you?
I know they're doing everything they can to get it fixed.
Yeah, it was, I spent 2
I
God,
like
I'd rather be kayaking than turning
No.
Gone by, yeah,
Friendly.
sure.
Animal staff. You got to get all these
It's good.
ships.
I was up at Camp Alton, so we were gone, and I talked to
fun?
families who were there, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it was fantastic." I said, "We didn't get results.
Yeah.
We didn't have results yet." And I'm like, "Oh okay." And I'm like,
Yeah, they just, so we
I
had,
thought they did have results posted, but I didn't realize they had no results. Like we have SARS. Yeah.
yeah.
Joy and Kenny are sitting there for fun.
Always the first. Yeah. I'm just glad.
I'm
Yeah.
glad.
Maybe Joy was off to you and upgraded you.
We had other good
I think
firsts.
it's usually the police chief's chair.
Oh, we don't have any call. Oh, yeah, we do. There's one on the
You're gonna be
I've
uncomfortable.
been on the board for a year in September.
Hi, Rick.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Can I get? Is that gonna work?
Well,
You need
we'll see how it
spatial.
goes.
It's cords right on you.
I would rather see
You're giving
more
Chief
than
Jenny a
less. I
chief
want
chair.
people working
Yeah, I would love this
passionate
here
about
every
it.
issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it would make our difference on the wall, but
Wow. Thank you, Deb. You really
It's a
Monumental.
move I learned from the Globetrotters.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Huh? Yeah, it is.
it took me a lot of typing and rearranging to get that onto a single page.
It's impressive.
Huh? No, not at all.
You know, it's a difference. Oh my, that would be so painful.
I know. Not, no, I can't. I've never passed a lie detector
Okay.
test. I may know who did it.
Oh, that was you. That would be me. Oh, it's Rachel. Oh, okay. So you got that. Yeah. That's your back. I sit here rocking. That answer. No, no. I said Rachel. I said it was Jeff.
But it wasn't me.
Yeah, right? It's a third person chair. It's a lot of space. I have something to say.
I feel like you're late for January.
It's good. Hello. No, yeah, I'm fine. No, I'm just kidding with it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, thank you though.
Kind of sucks, huh?
Brian used to insist.
Oh, that one. Oh, I believe it. It's for everybody's safety.
No, Luke's got a good idea.
Yes.
Stand until you have to sit down.
And you're thinking a lot like what I'm thinking. Here's what I did. I told him I would talk to the chief about it. And that,
But she's not
you know,
back
I
on the
can
board
see
for
some
any of my
positives from it.
She's like, I have a
Also
Jen and
see
Friday
some-
meeting and she's not in our practice. Like, I'm glad she's back.
Yeah.
For sure.
I told him
remember,
exactly the
like,
same
I
thing.
was
Concerned with
6 weeks.
backing up to the
It was weird.
railroad, even though the railroad at most has like a 1 mile an hour
Yeah.
going trail,
Right a little
but
bit.
it's still.
Oh,
And
because they have
the railroad would not like it.
No.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time to come in.
Good. Thanks for coming on over. He's very happy. It didn't take long. It's been like what?
All right, all right.
So you went back with the 3 dates?
Yeah, I'll put it. Or is it coming?
And Dan, are you ready? Okay. All right, everybody, it's 5 o'clock. On Monday, August 16th, I'm going to call the Village Board of Oregon to order. And Candy, can you take roll call, please?
Yes. Kilo,
Here.
Folly,
Here.
Kulish,
Here.
Peterson,
Here.
Stitch,
Here.
Wunsch,
Here.
and I have Fashion as
All right, excellent. Okay, we're down to number 3, approval of village board minutes, and we have 3 different dates to approve. First one is February 22nd, and I'm just gonna point out that it looks like Jerry, myself, Luke, and Amanda were here, so others probably won't do anything, but if we can have a motion and a second for, first by Luke. Amanda?
Second.
Okay, anybody present that, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we got that one out of the way. March 8th, looks like Amanda, myself, Jerry, and Luke again. So I'll take a motion to accept for Amanda and then Luke. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then we have August 2nd, that one we have, let's see, we have, I think, all of us were here for that one, except Carlene was absent. So I'll take a motion from anybody to approve, from Derek and Amanda. Any discussion or changes? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Public appearances. So the folks in the audience, the next is public comment. Typically, we take any public comment from anybody on or off the agenda. If you're here for the library, we're gonna hold off and have you speak when we get to that item. It seems more appropriate for you to speak when we start talking about that. But is there anybody else in the audience that would like to talk to the board about anything other than the library? Not seeing none, okay. And then 4B, we have Deb Bossingham on the splash pad project and fundraising. Deb, welcome.
All right, my name is Deb Bossingham. I'm the aquatics director at the Oregon Pool. I'm also the co-chair for the splash pad. And I want to thank you for letting me come in and kind of fill you in on some of the splash paddy fun stuff. I guess my first question is, have you all had the opportunity to be or go to a splash pad or know what a splash pad is? Because if so, I can, okay, I just want to say, otherwise I can give you that whole spiel too. So I did give you in your packet PowerPoint that has pictures of the splash pad and what we're looking to do. This splash pad obviously there's no standing water for this. This is all spray features. It is also a recirculating system. I'm big into making sure that we are saving as much water as we can, which that's what we're trying to do with this splash pad, and that is why it costs a little bit more than what you would see in some splash pads in certain areas. That is a flow through that would go into your sewer system or into your creek, kind of situation in that park. So what I would like to go over is some of the important things and why a splash pad is important for Oregon. It does promote an intergenerational safe activity where parents with young children or have many children, they are not, when you bring them to a pool, obviously it's a safety situation when you have multiple children and one adult, where this kind of a situation, you can have one adult with multiple children and you are in a little bit more safer situation. It is open to all at no charge, it's inclusive. Serves current residents and families, becomes a destination for families from surrounding towns, and promotes increased revenue for the local Oregon businesses. So this whole pandemic thing kind of has brought up the situation of people wanting to be outside in our parks. And parks are a big plus for our families to be able to see each other, see generations of each other. And that is what we're hoping this splash pad brings to Oregon, where intergenerational play is what we're trying to say. This was also constructed very intentionally. It's to promote learning of all ages. So when you look at a splash pad, it wasn't just put up like, ooh, that was a cool feature. There's actually play features. Some of the pictures that you can see around me right now have very specific age areas where all ages can play, but there's very specific places for young children that maybe don't want to be splashed with a big bucket on their head, where maybe a 12 or 13-year-old would, that kind of thing. One of our major donors has especially mentioned that his family would go to splash pad tours, where you go from one community to another to their splash pads. And what we're trying to do is be part of that, where people come here, bring business to us, bring our families together in a fun place without having to go to another neighboring community. The budget process, why I'm here. The budget for this splash pad, the entire thing, including the part that is already built, which is the pump house and bathrooms, is $970,000. Over 30 separate water features are made of high-quality materials to provide limited maintenance or repairs. Management and maintenance provided through the Oregon Pool and the Oregon School District partnership. And the Oregon School District has already donated $150,000 to this project already. That is the part that has been built. A local splash pad task force has moved the design operation partnerships, fundraising and bidding work forward since 2016. Demonstrated community interest through contributions to the project from individuals and local businesses and partnerships at fundraising events have been going well. It does say the 300. We're almost at 400,000 right now. We are still trying to get this built as soon as possible so that Oregon residents can enjoy that, or Oregon area residents. And we wanted to break ground within this year, which is why I'm coming here to the village to hopefully see if you can put us possibly into your budgeting process. We know you have been progressive in creating a better Oregon with a lot of the different projects you've done. And that you understand that the splash pad will serve the families of the Oregon area, not just the village, but the area of Oregon. And I'm asking if you would consider the splash pad in your budgeting process of $100,000 in the village budget for this coming year when you start working on budget this year. The support of this project will bring not only a splash pad to Oregon, but it will bring another asset to help build community with our families. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or comments or things I should bring back?
On the board, questions? Jerry and then Derek?
Derek, go ahead.
Just, you mentioned that you're closer to $400,000, and also that the school was putting forth 150. Is part of that 400,000 that 150, or those two
Yes,
separate?
yeah, everything.
That is-
We're putting everything together so that it's we want to make sure everybody knows how much the total is, how much everybody has given, not just the community.
I guess my other question would be is, as far as the ongoing cost of maintenance, do we have any projections on what that's going to be?
Right now, I do not have that. The company that we are working with, recreational specialists, out of Verona, have said that it really is hard to say depending on circumstances, where if we have vandalism or something like that, but they have not had big budget items that they've had to redo, as long as it's put in correctly, that is our goal.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question. It'd be about the recirculating system
Yeah.
for the water. Any idea on warranty on that equipment? Because I know when you get to water treatment, it gets extremely expensive
Yeah,
really
so-
quick when things break.
Yes, so recirculating systems, each piece has different warranties, so it's kind of like a pool. So we have filters, we have sanitation systems such as like your chlorine feeders. You have different pumps that will push through all of this and to make the actual system go. Each piece has a different warranty.
Okay.
So I can't really say, well, the whole kit and caboodle is this. It depends on the wear and tear of a certain piece is what happens.
those.
So like the pool pump,
Mhm.
let's say that has a 5-year warranty. But my filter, that one has a 10-year warranty. And then my feeding system, that one is, I think only, that one's a year, because feeding systems are a little bit smaller pieces of
So
equipment.
You guys are, for the splash pad, gonna be going chlorine feed as opposed to like a UV system kind of thing? Is that?
Yeah, in the
Okay.
state of Wisconsin, you have to, yes.
Okay,
You,
gotcha.
right now, we have to have chlorine at a 1.0 part per million for any type of public
Sure.
situation. Now, would I like UV? You bet, add that on there too. But right now, we want to get the pad built in the specs that follow the state rules. Any other questions?
Jerry?
Yeah, thank you. And Deb, very nice presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome photos.
Thank you.
And I think I've only got a little experience with a couple of these. I've seen the one out at Goodman, and I've seen the one in Middleton. And you're right, they're very popular when they're built. So if I understood you right, 150,000 the school has committed already for the
Yes,
school.
they have already put that toward building
Okay.
the pump house and the bathrooms that are there.
You've still
public
got a
bathrooms.
$100 or $100,000 hole that you need to fill to get that built. Is that correct? That's what you're asking for?
We're asking for 100,000 from the school, or
Okay.
from the village.
And
yes,
then
sorry.
who pays the maintenance? The school?
The school, it'll be part of what I do with the pool.
So-
It would all be part of that, with the Fund 80.
Okay, so then $150,000 plus the maintenance will come out of the school levy.
Mhm.
And that'll be added to, that'll be part of the taxes of every family in the school district.
In the school district, correct.
Okay. So the problem I see, I mean, I shouldn't say this is a problem, the unfairness I see with that plan
Mhm.
is that $100,000 that's gonna come from the village, that's just 3,000 families that are gonna pay that. And they're already gonna pay again, they're gonna pay again in the school levy. Because the
Okay.
school is gonna add that onto their school taxes.
Correct. Correct.
So, and
It
I-
will be directly helping, though, the village of Oregon businesses, the
Yeah,
ones that are downtown and all that, too.
Yeah, I'm
but
not gonna debate
But I
that.
see what you're saying.
No, I'm not gonna debate that, I just bring it up for information for
Yeah, no,
for anybody that's watching and for my colleagues.
Yep, that makes sense.
Personally, though, I think we should wait and take this up at budget time.
Oh, yeah, this
Yeah.
was just an ask,
Yeah,
so
no,
that
no,
you
no.
think about it during budget,
Yeah, yeah, no, and so I'd
Yeah.
ask that staff, I don't know if a motion is appropriate, but I'd like to ask staff to put that on their put it as part of the cap plan. And we can talk about it during budget, along with everything else that we're gonna spend money on. So,
Okay, Jerry, anything else?
that's all.
All right, Amanda?
Oh, I just wanted clarification. I thought there were more households in Oregon. I
Well,
thought
there
it was
could
more
be.
like 4,500. Could I
Oh.
get some kind of, is that a closer number of between which the cost would be spread?
You know,
just to-
I last time I heard was 3, you could be right, because there's a lot of construction going on.
I
So
think it's closer to like 3,800, 3,900, isn't that? I think for our utility connections, I think that's pretty
Okay.
close.
But my
And
point
thank
again
you.
is.
That
would
just
include
wanted
commercial though.
That includes commercial, yeah, so
In all
it's-
But my
businesses,
point
so if
again
you're
is-
just looking at the residential homes, it's probably 3,500 maybe.
But again, my point is that
Mhm.
the school, or the village residents will be paying in the school tax, and they'll be paying again when they get their village tax bill. But that's something we'll consider during budget time.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, and you said you're starting construction this year?
No, we would like to, but I will not start construction until I have money in hand.
Okay,
I
'cause
need to
there's-
make-
There's no way in the world that you'll get money even if we put it in the budget till next year.
Well, we also have hired a fundraiser who is also helping us with some major donors that we are waiting to hear back from, that I really can't disclose at this point in time, but I'm hoping. I mean, obviously, we're all hoping that we can make this happen. But I'm to the point where we're getting to the end part where I wanted to see if the village would help us with this also.
Okay. I share your concerns, Jerry, but I think this is a great project, and I would like to consider it as part of the budget as well.
I agree. Anybody else? Okay, Deb,
All right.
appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. All right, we're on to 5, proclamations and announcements. A is upcoming meetings and events. We have a report in our packet that we can put stuff on our calendars. Let's see, we'll go to 6 is report of village officers. First one is village administrative report. We have a 3-page, it's like. Martin, anything you want us to know?
Yeah, I got a report there in the packet, just highlighting a few items. Nothing to add unless there's any questions.
Okay, anybody? See anything? Okay. Finance Director report on annual building permits, impact fees, connection fees as of July 2021. That was also in our packet. Anybody have any questions for Lisa? on that one? Okay, not seen any. Village Department head, staff, or consultant comments? Anybody? Okay. We'll go on to 7, which is communication miscellaneous business. First one is approval of vouchers. We have a total $433, $356 and 24 cents. I'll take a motion in a second to get it on the table so we can have questions.
I'll move those.
Okay, Jerry, Amanda, okay. All right, questions. Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
All right, Dirk.
I think both mine are for Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first one I have a question on is vendor number 170. I'm assuming it's wastewater treatment plant building 60 is from Alliant Energy for $9,543. Is that just the number I just happened to overlook in the last ones, or is that the normal?
Nope, that's very normal.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, that's our sludge processing building and
Okay.
runs all the time.
And my other one would be 9468 William Reed LTD water dehumidifier well 4 for
Yes.
$3,129.
Yes. So that's a dehumidifier exactly like this one that we use back here. It's a
Okay.
commercial dehumidifier, and the previous one had been almost 20 years old, so we had to replace it,
Okay.
especially in summer with it, so much condensation in the pump houses.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, who else? Jerry's up?
Yeah, unless somebody else has a question. I don't know. Okay. Curb stops. What exactly are those, Jeff?
A
I
curb
forgot.
stop or a curb stop valve box is usually, it's where we turn on and off the water to individual services to go into houses. So you'll see that usually located in the apron or in the driveway, and it's a metal box that, or it's a metal tube essentially with a lid on it that allows us to access the valve boxes, or the valves, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So, how much are they each?
Couple hundred a piece usually. I mean,
Okay.
right now, honestly, supply and demand it's very difficult to find them. So when Don found them, I know he bought a bunch of them just so we'd have them on
Okay,
stock.
so you've got a supply now.
Oh, yeah, yep.
I had no idea how many you got for, what is it, $2,000 or so?
Probably 10,
Yeah.
15.
Okay. What is, Arbor Systems of Madison,
Yes,
EAB treatment, ash borer.
yes, emerald ash borer
Yeah.
treatment. So I chose not to, I've chosen to treat the large trees up at the cemetery as well as some critical trees at Bethel Greenacre Park.
Okay. And then, bouncing over to the credit cards, the curb replacements, who are we paying? I mean, I can't see who the recipient of the funds are, but curb replacement, who are we paying?
What's the dollar amount on that, Jerry?
Well, there's several of them, $394, $644, $362.
What page are you looking at?
I'm on page 8. Those might be,
Right
do
at
we,
the start of the US Bank.
Oh, water credit,
I don't know, 12 down and 15.
what page are you on? Page 8.
it's in the middle of the page, water curb replacement, one's 394, one's 644.
The water curb replacement, okay. Those might be, that's probably invoices for the concrete to Lycon would be my guess.
Oh, okay, that would make sense, because I
Yep.
know our staff generally does the curb replacement.
Correct. My
So-
guess, so that's 13148 on 6121. Look for Lycon would be my
Yeah.
guess.
That would make sense, Jeff,
What we can do is we'll look into it, and
Yeah,
then
no,
I'll send you an
I-
email with
I'm-
response to it, but that would be my guess, because it also is parks sidewalk ramp, park bench. That was a bench that we put out in Highland of Netherwood Park, and if that's in the same category there, which it is, it would be concrete.
okay.
Yep.
And then, a little further down the, credit card list, I see payments for Mike's cell phone and Gary's cell phone. Now,
Right,
Did
those-
the current staff just take over their cell phone? or-
Correct. So that's actually, and I've corrected that a few times, but we're just working on getting that corrected
Okay.
under the naming of it. But Mike's would be for Martin,
Okay,
and Gary's is now with Nick.
very good, very good. And, one last thing, and this is probably be Lisa's, and we pay annual fees on our credit card? I mean, we're being charged one here in the June statement and also in the May statement. And I just wondering, with all the money we have on deposit, why would
It's
we?
probably an annual fee for an Amazon account or something like that. It's probably not for the use of the credit card itself, because this credit card program we're in, we actually get like a rebate every quarter.
Right.
I guess if you could let me,
There's a,
which line are you looking at?
see this one on, for $299.94, it's
Yeah,
What page are you on?
it's on
page 92 in the
page
packet, but
10.
that doesn't help you.
Page 10.
Page 10?
Sorry, page 10, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, one is for Zoom and one looks like it's for crowdper.com. I don't know
Oh,
if
those are our annual license fees at the library for our Zoom license. We use that for our online programming right now. And then CrowdPer is also a licensing fee for a software product we use for our programming.
Okay, I don't know whether you're seeing,
I have the electronic version, so I have the full width, and it's right.
Oh, okay.
It's on my
Okay, it's
screen
probably
here.
out.
It's not on his, but it's on my screen.
okay, all right.
Says annual
You see
fee,
that,
that one?
Lisa?
Yeah. If you go all the way over to the right,
probably on
there's
the
a couple
second-
columns,
it's on this
and it
side.
says who we pay and who authorized it, so I can see next to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you got way more information.
All right. Jerry, anything else?
That'll be all, Randy.
All right, anybody else? All right, yeah.
Just, might be for Jeff again, just one more, 9530. Wisconsin Rural Water General Government Safety TR, probably training.
Training, yeah, that's our that's probably for, I think that's for 3 to 4 staff. We send to the Rural Water Conference, so that they can keep up their annual, credit hours that they need to maintain for their water licenses.
Thank you.
Jeff, if you scroll down a little more, past 8, 9, 10 page, the credit cards are detailed out. Going.
Page 95.
There you go.
Right there.
That's what
Those-
we're looking
those
at.
charges were for Lycon.
Yeah, it's
Those
Yeah.
initial charges, so if you look at there, you'll be able to see.
Oh, okay, so I got it right. That's good.
Okay. Luke, you're good? You good? Get your- Okay, anybody else? All right, we got a motion and a second on the table. Candy, do you want to do a voice?
Wunsch,
Yes.
Glick,
Yes.
Belo,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Stitch.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, 7B is library board minutes for July 14th. It is informational, was in our packet. Anybody have any questions for Jennifer or any on that? Okay, seeing none, all right, good. 7C is the revised police department internship program forms. The staff recommendation is a motion to approve as presented. Chief, do you want to say anything before we entertain a motion or anything on that?
Sure, I'll just be brief. Over the summer, we were contacted by staff at the school district asking if we'd be interested in working with an unpaid intern, a high school intern, and we've done really well in the past with the program, so I obviously welcomed the opportunity again. The details are really laid out well in the memo I put together, so I won't bore you with the details yet again. But it gave me an opportunity to take a step back, take a look at the forms we utilize. I didn't feel like, I just felt like they could be better. So I worked with Attorney Kyle Gulia and Attorney Ryan Hayden to bring those up to par, make sure the village was in a better position liability-wise. So with their help, and this was also in researching what some other departments are using as well, we came up with a total of 5 different forms. Really, it's 3, but we had to make 2 of the forms, minor version and an adult version. So in there, you're going to see a background authorization form for minor interns, one for adult interns, a waiver release and indemnity agreement for a minor and adult, and then obviously one confidential information form. And then the forms are below in the packet.
Okay, anybody questions for, yeah, Amanda, and then Derek? Looks like Mike. you too?
Yeah, I just had a couple of things I wanted to point out. There's actually a typo that jumped out at me on the 4th page, under that item, about all the paragraphs start with I may, but the last one says I and, comma, if I am a minor under the laws, and I thought, that doesn't make sense. Do you see that?
You see it, Chief?
I do, so to me, this would read, I, John Smith, and if I am a minor under laws of Wisconsin, my parent or legal guardian, Dave Smith, understand that. So it's basically the 2 parties saying that they understand. So to me, it makes sense. I don't know if Matt has any feeling on that line.
If it's not a typo, then
It's,
I, and if I'm a minor, I can agree that. You're just asking whether that's an appropriate way to introduce this?
right, does the sentence formatting
That looks
jive?
okay to me. They're agreeing to everything that follows.
Okay.
Okay. That's good then. And then the only other thing I noticed, these are authorizations, particularly for a minor, but also for an adult, where they give consent to release their driver's license and their gender and what's the last birth date or whatever it is, to make sure, verify person's identity. But then the forms themselves ask for the social security number, not the driver's license number. Was that intentional, or?
No, we collect all of that information anyway. So with this, if this moves forward, we actually do a background on it, the intern as well, because they are allowed to see certain information, and we just want to make sure they're of good moral and character and integrity. So that's why we need that information more than anything, is so that we can confirm their identity, but also conduct an effective background.
So they don't have to also consent that you use their social security number to do the background check?
We may, it just depends on how the information comes forward. With juveniles, it's challenging. So we want all of that information. And we also want to confirm their identity, and that's one way you do it too, is through your social security number.
Okay. I mean, if the lawyers looked it over, then I guess that makes sense to me.
Well,
so
with
that's good.
juveniles, many aren't issued any sort of state ID yet. So
Right.
there's challenges to navigate through. That's why it's
Yeah.
nice to have just everything.
Yeah, it just didn't include the language in the body of it about the social security number, so I just was noticing the mismatch, and that's why I brought it up. But if that's a standard practice and the lawyers are good, then I'm good.
Okay,
Thanks.
Amanda. Garrett.
Yeah, first off, I'd just like to say thanks, Chief, for putting this together, and I appreciate it, and I forget the person's name that we swore in just the other week from town. I like that you're looking local, for local people within the school district. That's nice to see, that we're pulling from our own talent pool. I do have a couple of questions in regards to, you touched on background checks for the interested parties. Do we do any sort of mental health screening for them?
Not for an intern, no.
Okay, our officers get it though, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I guess kind of going down that road, I kind of got to thinking about training that's provided to the intern. What are we providing? I mean, are we sending them to similar training as the officers? Are we providing them with, I guess, the tools that they would need in the future to actually fill this role?
So they're not put into a police officer capacity in any way.
Right.
So like, for example, this particular individual, she's very interested in coming into law enforcement and more specifically becoming a canine officer. So we're gonna allow her to do a few ride-alongs just like we would any other civilian that doesn't need to be trained, they just are an observer. But we're also gonna have her help research new trends in canine usage, if, you know, how we could build our program to be stronger, that sort of thing. They're not used in any sort of enforcement capacity. Honestly, we look at this is unpaid intern to do some work for us.
No, and I
Yeah.
totally agree. And like I say, I was just wondering if we're sending them to any like formalized training for future use, and that's fine. And just kind of on the training route, as I was going through that in my head, was wondering, and I spoke with Chief Linsmeyer in the fire department about something similar a couple of weeks ago. Is there a way for the police department to put on their website a calendar of training that your officers do regularly? Would that be something that we could work on?
We could. It changes often though.
And that's fine.
Especially with COVID, we're continually having training canceled. Then also if there's not enough signing up for the training, it gets canceled. The problem with doing a calendar too is it can be misleading. Very rarely are we ever able to send an entire staff because we still have to keep the community safe. So we may send 1 or 2 employees to one training, 2 to another. What I try to do instead, just to keep it accurate and not being misinterpreted, is I try to report it back in our annual reports. So how many hours were spent for mental health training, how many hours were spent for training related to drugs or the canine, and if there's something that we really focused on that year, then I try to explain exactly what that training program was. So like this year, crisis training is a big one. So in our annual report for the beginning of next year to show what we did in 2021, it's going to highlight that training, how we were able to accomplish it, how many hours were utilized to do the training, how we accomplished that. We actually made our own instructors because that's the only way we can get our entire agency to, you know, buckle down and get it done in a year. But then also, how are we going to see change because of that training? Doing a calendar, it's just challenging because policing is so dynamic when it comes to training.
Yeah, and I definitely understand that. And as I was kind of going through this in my head over the course of the weekend, I was actually approached by a couple of people that would love to see in more detail, because I paged through your last year's report after I was thinking about this, and I found it, yes, you do lay out what the training was, but it's fairly broad, and being as the people are paying for the training, I'd love to see it, like I say, just a little bit more formalized, easy for them to access kind of thing. But we can work on that some other time. That's, as far as this program goes, I think that's...
Yeah, I've heard the exact same thing, and you know, that's why with the first annual report I did, it was one of those, I'm pushing out all this information with the understanding that I'm going to get feedback, and it's going to constantly evolve, it's constantly going to get better. And honestly, if training is something people really want to know about, we can make half of our annual report all about training. That'd be fine. But what I found the most helpful, even for the school resource officer, is you can give a list of all the training, how many hours they attended, but what's more important is what exactly is that training? What does it cover?
I agree.
And what are we accomplishing with it? So it will be very lengthy, but I have no problem doing that.
Yeah, and I saw what you did with the school resource officer
Yeah.
too, and it's very detailed, and I liked it a lot. But yeah, I think going forward, I think that some of the community would like to see a little bit more
Absolutely,
detail on it.
I'd be more
so-
than happy to.
And that's all the
Yeah.
questions I have for you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mike, did you have something?
Yeah, just briefly, this, the waiver and things is amazingly comprehensive, and indemnification is amazingly comprehensive on what it covers. Is this similar to what other departments are doing?
Yes,
So if, like, an intern was in a traffic accident while they're out going with, police, the village wouldn't be on the hook for that at all?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. If an intern was in a I mean, I'm thinking of ways that, like, interns might incur costs for this, and one of the likely ones would be traffic accident or something like that, where they got injured. My reading of this is we're not on the hook for that at all,
Correct.
okay?
Is that it, Mike?
Yeah, it's,
Okay. Okay, anybody else? All right. So we are looking for a motion to approve as presented.
Move to approve.
Okay, Jerry? Luke? Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Good. We're on to 7D, request to close the Oregon Area Senior Center at 1 o'clock on Friday, November 12th for staff in service. We have a recommended motion to approve. Can we get a motion in a second? Luke? And Derek? Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 7E is the annual skid steer lease with Bobcat of Janesville in the amount of $3,000. Staff recommends approval. Jeff, anything before we vote on it?
No, I think it's pretty well laid out in the memos there.
Okay. You may want to make a motion in a second. Derek and Amanda? Okay, any discussion on this one? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
7F is authorized closure of parking lot at Waterman Triangle Park for September 2nd. First responders event per submitted request and site plan. Recommended motion is to approve. Would you like to make that motion in a second? Amanda? In a second. Luke? Any discussion on this one? Anybody? Yeah.
I just
Derek?
got a question, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure if this would, I'm assuming it probably goes to Jeff, because that's the way these things seem to go. I noticed on the site map, they have a bounce house listed right there. Is there room for a bounce house right there, given the cannon right there?
Probably behind, not the cannon, it's not, this is a sketch really, so, yeah, it'd be probably between the bounce house and Village Hall.
Okay, that's all I was wondering about. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, Amanda?
Yeah, and I didn't know if we, I guess this is just I think we should approve this just because other groups have reserved part of the parking lot before, and so I don't have any issue with that. But this event sounds pretty similar to National Night Out, which we just had, and so I guess I would maybe encourage the organizers to, in the future, to maybe combine somehow or do something with that rather than do a separate event, or maybe I'm not understanding what the event is about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
so
have Chief.
they're actually very different.
Okay.
National Night Out is like for us, it's the village hosting the event. And we invite the community out to see vendors, to go to whatever tables are set up, and get to know the fire police. This event is basically the complete opposite. This is not the community government hosting the event. It's the community itself hosting the event for the first responders.
Okay.
So we've never had anything like that I'm aware of in the 16 years I've been here. So, yeah.
Okay,
So like an honoring kind of a thing, is it?
So I've met with the Kings, and I believe their intent is to just celebrate the Oregon and Brooklyn's first responders, to include, I believe, corrections as well, local corrections.
I think they just want a event to say thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think correct me if I'm wrong, we have a motion and a second, I believe, yes? I lose track sometimes.
Yep.
Randy, just to clear, this is just, the parking lot closure is the only area that we're really basically right out here.
Okay.
Not the remainder of the parking lot that serves all the other downtown portion down here.
Okay.
That's correct, right? So, okay, just that where it says parking lot vendors set up, blocked off.
Okay. And Candy, am I right? I had a motion and a second. Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, 7G is request to close Village Hall, second and the fourth Tuesday of the month, starting September 15th through the end of 2021, and to discontinue Village Hall community room reservations beginning September 15th to prepare for moving Village Hall operations to the new facility. Staff recommendation is to approve as presented. Would like to make a motion, Jerry and Derek? Okay, discussion, questions? Anybody? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. 8, reports of committees. Items are for discussion, possible action. 8A is the Planning Commission certified map for 1053 and 1075 Park Street, submitted by DAJK LLC. Plan Commission staff recommendation is to approve as submitted. Can we get a motion in a second? All right, Mike and Derek, sorry, Luke, okay? Any discussion on this one? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. A2, Resolution 2139, resolution conditionally approving the final plat, the first addition to Autumn Ridge, submitted by Glenn and Michelle Hoffert, Living Trust. Plan Commission staff recommendation is to approve as presented. Looking for a motion in a second. Jerry, and you need a second? All right, I'll take Derek.
And I've got a question, Randy.
All right, yes, we're on discussion. Go ahead, Jerry.
I don't know who to ask, but I used to know where that was. Where is that located?
The Autumn Ridge subdivision?
Yes.
Oh, I don't have the thing pulled up here. Let's see if we have an exhibit here.
The one off
It
the-
is, do you know where Foxfield Road is?
Yes.
Where the new Foxfield Road meets
Okay.
County Highway MM?
Okay, so it's there.
Just south of there.
Okay,
But it's still west of Highway MM.
got it. I know exactly what you mean, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Moving along. Let's see. 8A3, ordinance 2113, ordinance adopting the zoning map amendment for the first addition to Autumn Ridge to rezone parcel 165-0509, 134-8501. From Dane County zoning G4 agricultural to RH rural holding and SR4 single family residential. Plan Commission staff recommendation. First, we'll take a motion to suspend the rules and waive the first and second readings, and then we'll take a motion to approve the ordinance as presented. So, looking for a motion and a second to suspend the rules, readings. Amanda and Mike, okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor say.
I do have a
Oh,
discussion.
yeah.
On page 141, there's a map. And they have, part of the lands to be rezoned are marked as institutional. Is that an error?
No, that's a good catch, or not a good catch, it's a good to notice that. So, we asked the same questions, and what that was is, technically, long-term, it'll be zoned institutional. When we don't have a good zoning district that fits park and open space. And so historically, right now under our current zoning district, the more appropriate zoning district is institutional, correct, Mike?
Well,
Yeah.
historically though, we use the ag.
Exactly, we've used a rural holding district. And so in order to keep with how we have done all the other parks and everything and detention pond areas and that, we had the ordinance rewritten to RH rural holding. But there will come a day, probably in the next year, where Elise will bring forth a addition to our zoning code that will be a zoning district that is more appropriate for parks and open spaces, and then we will bring everything into that district.
Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a follow-up, that was my question too, Mike. But when we had looked at this before, I was under the impression that the park wasn't gonna be right off of MM. Or, I mean, it just looks to me like instead of having the houses to the north and then the park to the south of it in a longer format, they'd cut it vertically instead so that they have the park closest to the highway, and I'm wondering if that's a good thing. You'd think if it was.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. I
that's-
think maybe it's might be just the orientation of the drawing. Sometimes they put north to the left and sometimes they put north up. And so, yeah, nothing's changed with the orientation in the last
Okay.
probably 7, 8, 10 months or so.
Okay, well, I guess I'm just asking,
So-
you know, what kind of setbacks do we have off Highway MM? Because that's a fairly busy roadway there. And,
Correct.
depending on where we put playgrounds and things, are we aiming to put those further back from the highway?
Yeah, the parking and everything is way back off of Ridgeview Lane and that type of thing. There won't be parking out along MM or anything. And then, yeah, when the fields are laid out there, we'll have to make sure that there's plenty of setback from County Highway MM.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? All right, so this is, we do have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the first and second readings of the ordinance. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Then we need a motion to approve the ordinance as presented. Amanda? And Derek? Okay, any other discussion on the ordinance itself? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're on to 4, agreement to undertake development of plat of first addition to Autumn Ridge between Ridgeview Development LLC and the Village of Oregon. Staff recommendation is to approve the motion as presented. Do we, anybody, yeah, Martin?
Matt's gonna cover
Or
some
Matt's gonna do
things.
it, all
Yep.
right.
This is a standard development agreement, following the same format we've used in earlier phases of this development and the format we've used in other developments. The purpose of the agreement is to require that the public improvements needed to serve this new development are constructed and installed in accordance with the village's standards, to make sure that we have surety in place so that if there's a problem that we need to come in and correct, we can do that. And to address, risk allocation issues, insurance, identification, those kinds of things. So, the agreement that is in the packet now does recognize that this is a phased development and covers what's called Phase 2A. And I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you may have.
So the originally in the packet, it wasn't a phased approach, but that was corrected today when they reached out to us and told us it would be a phased approach. So in the packet now is the corrected phased version, which is on the website.
Thanks for that.
And Matt, I have just one, under stormwater fee, under your page 6.
Uh-huh.
Can you confirm that should be Phase 2A right here?
Oh, my apologies.
So we can
We'll correct that.
correct that, but that'd be the only change that I found after it was amended today.
Thanks for catching that. So that I'd request that your approval, the motion to approve, if there is such a motion, be to approve it with that correction of that typo.
Okay. Somebody comfortable making a motion? Amanda? Second?
Yes.
Anybody? Derek? Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Randy, I think just good to note, you know, Glenn Hofer's in the audience tonight, but they've done a nice job up there on the hill. Really nice subdivision and some really nice homes that are being brought into the village and stuff. So, and then I think their phase one is almost all built out, correct, Glenn? Yes.
All the lots are sold, and there's probably all the 10 homes that are
Yeah.
built, or 10 lots that are built on, and there's, the remaining 10, will all have homes on except for like 3 or 4
Yeah.
by November.
Yeah. We drive through that often, and it's amazing to see the growth going up there, and they're nice homes, so he's done a nice job with it.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, looks like we're on to 5, which is ordinance number 2114, ordinance amending sections, and you see all the sections there in front of you, but basically relating to the parking standards. And so what I would like to do on this is, I'd like for the village board to have a little discussion before we invite the members of the community that have comments. After they are finished, then we'll come back to the village board and see where things are at, if that's okay with everybody. I'd like to start. This has been a tough thing. I've thought about nothing all weekend but this parking issue. And I think we all, just a couple comments, we all want a great library. I mean, I think how lucky we are that we're gonna have a $12 million, we have $12 million to build a great library. And I think a lot of us, there's many of us in this room will help raise that public over $2 million. So I just sort of want to say kind of what I'm thinking, because I've gone back and forth. There's the thing, is it 350 per square foot, or is it 400? Back and forth. And so I tried to take some good thinking about it. I mean, it was originally proposed to be 350 from Elise, our planner. And as you know, the plan commission voted for 350. And I just want to say a couple things. I mean, for me, when I thought about this, Elise is a very experienced planner. And I did wonder, it's like, well, Elise, why don't you just do 400 like everybody else is doing? And then at the plan commission with John Beadle and the rest of us, we also selected 350. And I think, Elise isn't here, I haven't asked her, but I know what John Beano was thinking, is that having that 350, which means more parking, a little bit more parking, I believe that they're thinking, trying to let the library stand on its own. I think is their thinking, and as I thought about my responsibility as a trustee, I feel that I have to sort of think about what's in the best interest too for the village. So as I said, I've done a lot of going back and forth, and I certainly am not against green space. I'm a master gardener. I like green space, but I mean, John Beano too is an architect. He's had a lot of experience designing large buildings, but part of me is what's the best interest for the village? And I think by the 350 was chosen so that there was a little cushion just to make sure that there's enough parking. But having said that, I also think maybe tonight, maybe there's a compromise. Maybe there's a 375, halfway between 350 and 400. I don't know. We'll have to see how the rest of you feel. We have packets in our packets, letters in our packets. A lot of folks wrote about wanting 400. There's a couple in there for 350. There are some people who are not crazy about kids crossing the street. So I was thinking of is there a way that we can compromise? I mean, to be honest, I'm amazed that we're we're at this point where we're squabbling over 12 parking spots. That's the difference between the 350 and the 400. And so my feeling was, well, is there a way we can compromise at 375? It helps gain a little bit more green space. So I just want to tell you what the Plan Commission in essence did. The current ordinance is 250. And so what we did by approving 350 at the Plan Commission is that we actually eliminated 37 parking spots already. The goal, you know, some folks would like to see 98. My compromise brings us to 103. So I guess I'll be quiet, and that's kind of how I'm feeling. I'm just really, I hate to see this sort of divide members of the community over 12 parking stalls, but I understand the wanting for the green space, and I like green space. I wish we didn't have to have any parking, but we do. But I also feel like I have a responsibility as a trustee to do what's right for the village. So, who wants to go next?
I'll speak, or go ahead, Amanda.
No, go ahead, Jerry. I'm good.
I think I just want to get this project moving. So I think the planning recommendation is just fine. I'm fine with less parking. I just don't see the need to put a lot of asphalt over our green space. And, you know, if you get, the more asphalt, the more concrete you have, the more runoff you have. And you know what the runoff leads to, problems with storage. You know, we're already talking about possibly underground storage. So I think if we go 350 or even less if you want to, it just, the only other option is to build a smaller library. And I think I know how popular that will be. So and again, I think we need to get this project moving so we can move on and do something for the seniors of this community. I mean, the seniors desperately need a new senior center. The seniors desperately need some affordable housing. And instead of debating parking, I just can't see why debate parking at this time. So again, I'm for doing less.
So Jerry, just for clarification, because it kind of works the opposite way, the 350 would mean 110 stalls. 400, which is being also advocated for, means 98.
98's fine with me.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's 400 square foot, then, okay?
I mean, you want to go fewer than 98, I'm fine. I see way too many parking stalls when I'm around town.
Yeah.
And-
So I think, Jerry, for me, it's just been difficult because I just want to make sure we have enough. I don't think we can count on that lot across the street.
No,
We might get approval to use it, but this is, we're building a library for 100 years, and we may not always have that. So I'm just concerned about just having enough. Then I'm fine with it.
You know, I think you can deal with that problem if it arises.
Okay, all right, Amanda.
Yeah, I'm with Jerry on this. I think we have this fear that we're not gonna have enough parking. And if that happens, number one, we have ways to deal with that, because we're hoping to form a transportation committee, and we want to get some form of public transit in Oregon. You can fix that by carpooling, people just making more of an effort to drive less. And some people will need to drive. This library is going to serve a large area, so we will need a significant number of parking places. But I feel like not having enough parking, we're going to be able to count on one hand how many times we don't have enough parking. And the overflow on the street, I feel like there is some street parking nearby, and there are going to be people, regardless of whether or not we have an MOU, being realistic, there are still going to be people who are going to park in that school lot when it's available. And I don't, but as you said, I don't think we should depend on that when we're looking at the numbers. We're in agreement, I think, on that. But I think we need to build a library for the future and not so much the past. I'm not very afraid that we're not gonna have enough parking personally. And if we want to be a forward-thinking, progressive community and deal with climate change and all kinds of things, you know, we're at code red now. That's been all over the news. It's serious, and I think big, bold changes are necessary, and if the community is fine with one, and a lot of people in the community seem to be okay with one spot per 400 square feet of building. So I definitely would recommend that for the library, and I really think we should look at doing it for the rest of our parking ordinances too, not necessarily across the board, but let's look at those national standards and let's be on the forward edge of that. Let's do as little parking as necessary and start moving in that direction sooner rather than later. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, who wants to go? Mike, you want to go?
Yeah. As you're well aware, I'm in favor of less parking. In general, I think if we run out of parking, we can always build more if we need it, but right now, I don't believe that we have a good idea of how much parking we need. If we look at the figures coming out of Fort Atkinson, they have 86 parking stalls, and their librarian says they rarely fill 24 of them, and have never filled at all. The numbers that have passed around, about 800 people in the building and things, the response of the Fort Atkinson librarian was, yeah, we wish, because they've never had that either. Libraries are changing, as I'm sure Jennifer will attest to. People are now getting digital materials. People are stopping and ordering things online and just pulling up and driving through and not ever and bypassing the parking. We have all sorts of changes coming down the pike. Amanda talked about Code Red and the climate crisis. I find it really unbelievable that liberal Dane County will not be responding to the climate crisis by an increase in public transit and the quality of public transit. Over the next 15 years, there's all sorts of changes in how people are getting from place to place. We now have ride-sharing services. We have things like Uber. It's not far down the pike where we will have self-driving cars and shared cars and pooled cars and other things. It does not make sense for us to build a 21st century library on 20th century transportation modes. So I have a lot more comments about the proposed ordinance in general, but I would prefer to take that up when we actually have a motion on the floor.
Okay, anybody else? Whoop. Okay, you're good?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll
yeah, Derek.
say just a couple things. So I'm kind of sitting similarly to Jerry with the 350 versus 400. I would like to see this project get moving more than anything. And as far as, and I do see where Randy's saying, compromise is, not necessarily a bad thing. I feel personally that we can accomplish that compromise through other means other than going with 350 instead of 400. And I would strongly encourage the library and, during the planning phase that we perhaps implement some creative signage to reserve some space for the seniors in our community or people with infant carriers, or even, as Mike alluded to, with the increase in online, do a online curbside pickup spot. That way we, the available senior parking, whether or not it's enforceable or not, I think the majority of the village is going to do the right thing and stay out of places where they don't belong anyways. So I lean more toward 400 than 350, I find. That's pretty much all I got.
Okay. Luke, are you good? Do you want to speak? You're good. Okay, all right. All right, so let's let's hear what the community has to say. And Candy has had people who have registered, would like to speak, so when she calls her name, please come up.
The first person I have is Ann Kleckner.
So Ann, just tell us your name and your address, if you don't mind.
My name is Ann Kleckner, and I hadn't really planned on speaking, but
Oh.
My address is 5545 County Road A, Brooklyn, and I live outside of the village, but it's my village, and it's still, I consider it my village, and it's the library I would go to. And I'm strongly in favor of the 400-to-1 ratio. I don't think we'll ever fill 90-some spaces unless there's some huge event, and that's an oddity. And I'm all for not paving things that we don't need to. And I think the people concerned about kids crossing the street should be concerned about it all the time, because kids that, if it's parking across the street, the kids are going to be with someone. And the kids that are coming on their bikes are going to be crossing anyway. And, so it's always going to be a problem. I guess my question is for Jennifer. It's like, does she have an idea of how many people actually have been coming to the library on a regular basis? And I know that with COVID, that's probably a hard thing to say, and with a much bigger library, that might be a hard one to say, but I guess I'd like to know what she thinks about how many people might be in the library at any one time. So.
You want to, go ahead.
I guess the main point is if you want to know if I'm okay with changing the ordinance to the 1 per 400, I would not object to that. I would not have concerns if you choose to do that. So I think that kind of gets straight to the point.
All right.
Is that
Everybody
okay?
With her answering that? Okay, Jennifer, go ahead.
I mean, I think what you said earlier was that it's a matter of 10 to 12 stalls one way or the other. So if that's going to make or break our project, I think we have bigger concerns that we have ahead of us. I'm like Jerry, I want to get moving ahead. We're trying to do that. We were hoping to have an architect contract so we can get going for you tonight. Unfortunately, the timing didn't work out with that, but we're full speed ahead to get that to you. But if you choose to go with the 1 per 400, I would not have a concern with that at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
We'll do. I just wanted to let the public know too that it's not, I had a conversation with Martin earlier today that whatever we decide tonight is ordinance guidelines, but they can still fluctuate. There can still be variances and other things that may change the final number. So these are guidelines, and the message that we've gotten from people so far has been less parking is better, and that's definitely what we're leaning towards as a baseline, but the final number could still change. So whatever we decide isn't set in stone.
okay.
There.
Candy, who's up next?
Sorry.
Susan Shadevi. Hello.
My name is Susan Shedevy. I live at 1860 County Road MM, just north of Oregon in Fitchburg. I was really happy to have individual conversations on the phone with 4 of the board members yesterday and today. I appreciate their reception to discussing this issue. Last week, I visited both the Verona Library and the Fort Atkinson Library to see what their parking spaces were like. and I discussed the parking with the directors of both of those libraries. Fort Atkinson has a community lot that's across a fairly busy street. I would say their street is busier than our main street. It's got more lanes. They've got a lot for 70 there that they share with the post office and a few other businesses. And then they have street parking all the way around the building. The director said they've never had any complaints about parking, about the walking. Most of the parking is used right around the building on the street. At the Verona Library, they have 100 stalls. But both directors said that it's very rare that they have big populations using the parking. The biggest attendance might be something of like 375 people during story time. On very rare occasions, for some really special thing, they could have as many as 400 to 500 people for an event. But the librarian at Verona said during COVID, they average about 25 people per hour coming in the library. But before COVID, they averaged about 50, about twice that number per hour coming in the library. I kind of disagree with the comment that says we're squabbling over 12 parking spaces. I think we're squabbling over 60 parking spaces. We have a perfectly good lot across the street, and those parking spaces are closer to the library than if you're parking down toward Johnson Street, and then you're walking up a hill to the library. I'm a member of the Methodist Church, and I was a member when the original church building sat there, and it was very common for people to park in the school lot and walk across to the church because it was closer. I think we should utilize those spaces and not overbuild on the library lot. If we need more spaces later, if it's not working out, they can be added. But once that area is scraped and paved, it's irreversible. I think we should be forward-thinking, thinking for the future, not thinking the way we've always done things. And I really don't see why there's this necessity to feel like the library needs to stand alone. The library is a part of a community, and that was extremely apparent to me when I was in Fort Atkinson. The parking around there was shared by the post office, by several businesses, by the library. I really think we should not even consider 110 parking spaces on the library lot because we've got parking right around, across the street. Another thing had been talked about some time ago at planning commission meetings, and that was the option of possibly buying the property where that warehouse is for the seed company. I don't know what the asking price was. I heard that it was really high. If you save $300,000 by not building 60 extra parking spaces, that might allow purchase of that property. And then there's all types of street parking back on Market Street, which is, again, very close to the site for the library. Not sure if I covered all the things I wanted to say. Let me just glance, but I guess I just feel very strongly that we should just not pave too much at the beginning. We don't even know for sure how much parking we will need. And I think it's just kind of like pulling something out of the air to say, oh, well, 110 sounds good, let's do that. Let's do less, and later on, if we need more, okay, then the need arises. But I don't think there's a need right now. Thanks very much.
Okay, Susan, thank you. Candy, next.
Kermit Traska.
Kermit Traska, 116 West Lincoln Street, here in Oregon. Been a member or a community member since 1982, so about 40 years. I've seen a new library built in this town, and now have an opportunity to see another new library built. When Susan said things aren't irreversible, they are. You just have to look at Florida Street and see that houses and blacktop can be removed and nature restored. So that can be done. I'm happy with the comments that I've heard, that board members seem to think the 400 number is better. Seem to have been a little confusion on the inverse relationship, that with a smaller number like 350, you had more parking spaces, and a larger number like 400, you had fewer parking spaces. So I'm real happy with the discussion that we've heard so far tonight. Earlier this evening, you heard about shared services with the splash pad. The village part of it, the school district part of it. Parking at the school parking lot is shared services. And the community, whether it's school tax or the village tax, it's all supported. Randy, you mentioned earlier, John Vino being a good architect that builds big buildings. I'm the president of the Seth Peterson Cottage Conservancy, a cottage designed by Frank Lloyd Wright in Mirror Lake State Park. Frank Lloyd Wright addressed nature. He thought buildings should be a part of a hill, not set on a hill. And he thought there shouldn't be a separation of the building from nature. The building should be a part of nature. And for this to be a part of nature, you need the trees, you need the green space, you need less of that parking. With that, thank you very much for your time tonight, and I'm glad in the direction it seems to be going.
All right, thank you. Candy?
Brent Teskey.
Hi, my name is Brent Teskey. I live at 126 Johnson Street here in Oregon. I wanted to say two things tonight. Number one, thank you for everyone coming out here. I recognize that you all have busy lives, you have families, you have jobs, you have other hobbies and interests, and yet you still come out here. I know this is a thankless job many times, and that you are often the first people that residents reach out to when there's a complaint. I know you don't get thanks very often, but we do appreciate the fact that you are trying your best to do what is in the best interest of the community to make this a great place to live. Secondly, I would like to talk about mandatory parking minimums. When I'm talking about minimums, I am not talking about a maximum. I don't think there's anyone here advocating that we do not allow people to build a set number of parking spaces. We are saying we want to allow them to build fewer, but they can always build more. I also want to be clear that when I'm talking tonight, I am not referring just to the library. I am talking about all of our development patterns here. I can explain over hours of conversation about how high mandatory parking minimums degrade our community, how it changes our land use patterns, how it forces sprawl. I can explain how that impacts pedestrian safety, pedestrian experiences, how it limits active transportation and public transit opportunities in our community. I can explain how it increases the cost of all development, whether that is low-income housing that tenants are then required to pay for. If that is retail space, it is something that customers pay for. In the case of a public area, that's something that all taxpayers pay for. I can explain all of those things and how increasing parking results in higher vehicle miles traveled. I can explain how that increases particulate emissions, how it increases greenhouse gas emissions, and how that degrades health and our environment. Now, I can point to peer-reviewed journal articles that cite this type of information. I can look at books that are authored by people who are longtime prominent experts in these fields. I can point to the Institute of Transportation Engineers guidelines that specify one spot for 400 square feet, or one spot or 1.5 spots per dwelling. I can point to all of that, and I can cite it. But I can't explain why there are situations where in Oregon we feel we need more parking than that. And again, we are not talking about a cap, we are talking about the minimum. And all of these costs that then get passed on to people who are renting the property, customers, or taxpayers. And if we are really a community that requires that exceptional amount of parking, I would think that there would be evidence of that that could be presented. But I haven't seen that. So thank you for all of your support. I appreciate that you're all here, and I'm glad that we're all talking about decreasing those parking requirements, because I think that is the right move, both economically and from a health and safety standpoint. Thank you very much for your time.
Next.
Teresa Nelson.
Hi, I'm Teresa Nelson. I live at 245 Drumlin Circle in Oregon, and I'm here representing the Oregon Nature Alliance, which is an environmental conservation and advocacy group comprised of around 40 village residents right now. And part of our mission is to advocate for the protection and restoration of local natural areas, and really that's why I'm here tonight, to discuss the changes to the parking ordinance. While the library project started the conversation about the village parking requirements, we believe that the discussion should not just be limited to the library, but broader in how we will manage the village's land going into the future with important issues such as climate change and others, because once you pave over land, it rarely goes back. Sometimes it does, but rarely. And the more we pave, the more opportunities are lost. Once we pave, we lose the opportunity to allow water to soak into the ground, removing pollutants and replenishing our streams and aquifers. We lose the opportunity to plant native species to support wildlife and biodiversity that sustains all life, including ours. We lose the opportunity to grow a tree that would provide a new home for a baby bird while also sequestering carbon, helping us address Earth's changing climate. No, once we pave the land, we lose these opportunities and more, and all we get is hot, hard, impermeable pavement. I think the past year and a half has shown us that in times of stress, we seek out nature. Our state and county parks saw increases of over 25%, and I know I saw a lot more people out in our village as well, using our parks and trails. But nature isn't something that we seek out in just pandemics. Many of us seek out nature on a daily basis. We go for a quick walk outside over lunch to take a break from work and rest our minds. We need natural spaces around where we live and work, and to provide that much needed respite on a daily basis. When we develop land, we need to leave space for nature. As Kermit said, we need to have the buildings be part of nature, not separate. And this is for our health and the health of the environment. So the Oregon Nature Alliance supports the village's parking ordinance change that reduces the number of parking required for new buildings like the library. And we support the requirement for one parking spot per 400 square feet, though we would support reducing that further for other land uses and where it makes sense. In addition, I think using the shared parking is an excellent idea, and the on-street parking as well for those large, more rare occasions. So really appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you.
Ray Vogler.
Well, good evening. My name is Ray Vogler. I live at 299 North Main Street. I'm in the neighborhood where the library is going to be located. And I have advocated for the library for many years now. I have actually helped to raise funds for the library. I think it's a wonderful mission, and I think that we're going to make great use of that library. So first I want to thank all of you here tonight. I know that it takes a lot of work to come to these meetings, to read through all those minutes. I know you have a lot of that and the packets, and making these decisions. And I want to thank staff who went through all these countless letters and petitions and input from the public and made sure that you got all that information. So that's very greatly appreciated. Thank you for doing that. So what I want to say tonight is, number one, I'm very encouraged by the discussion that just took place by the trustees, so I'm very grateful about that. And I think what we're talking about here reflects on the original input sessions. I was involved in those. Many of you probably were a couple years ago. That would have been in 2019. There were neighborhood sessions. There were input sessions with leaders in the community. There were sessions of different individuals just to kind of look at what the building might be and how it would be placed. But one thing that rang true to everyone was that they wanted a building, as others have said tonight, in harmony with nature. So when you're in the building, you're looking out, and when you're out of the building, you're kind of looking in, where they're very much integrated. And with the parking situation as it might have been with the 109 parking stalls, that really would have prevented that kind of harmony, because it would have been a matter of just looking out on a parking lot. And it wouldn't be a big draw, actually, for Oregon. And there are other libraries around the area who do get it right. So you go up to different places like Wanakee, or you go to places like Janesville or Fort Atkinson or Verona, and they really do that, and I know that we can do it too. So a couple of things I want to talk about is why is it very important to have less parking? And I think a big part of that is, as we've been talking about, is we're moving ahead. We're moving into the future. We're part of the 21st century. And we keep saying that that library should fulfill that mission. So to do that, we need to be thinking about projections. And I did go through these numbers at the Plan Commission. So for those of you who have to hear it again, sorry, but I wanted to bring it up tonight. So there's a projection of a 50% reduction in parking needs over the next 30 years. So we already know there's a trend in that direction. We know millennials are driving less. We know that autos are becoming more expensive, and that people are finding them to be more out of reach. We're also finding that increased parking, and I think a number of trustees said it really well, that increased costs. So if we increase the parking at a community building, that gets passed on to taxpayers. And if we increase it, let's say for residential or rentals, that gets passed on to people who buy homes or people who rent. And if we want a community that's very diverse and that's affordable, we need to be thinking about that for all of our parking regulations. So we have a community where we are a draw, we can grow, and again, we can be diverse. We also need to think, as others have said, about climate change, and that transportation will be affected by that. People are walking more, they're biking more. We walk down here. I make a point now of walking more. I want to just not talk the talk, but walk the walk. So let's walk places. And having a bike path through the library is something that everyone wants. And then the other issue I want to bring up is over parking. And what I mean by that is there are parking lots, and a lot of them here in Oregon, that are not fully utilized, and they just sit empty. And that's a waste of taxpayer money, a lot of runoff, and a big maintenance cost. Examples would be, let's say, BMO Bank, UW Health Clinic, Dorn Hardware, Bill's Grocery. A lot of those are just sitting there empty, and we don't want our hill and the look of the library to have that kind of appearance. So, as Susan and others have said, I think we have an opportunity here to use the parking across the street, the 60. We would need an MOU with the school district. They already offered to negotiate with us. I personally, 2 years ago, Dana Teskey and myself, we sat down with Brian Bustler, who was then the superintendent, and he was like all over that. He took it to the school board. They loved that. So I think that's a plan that we could really go forward with, and it'd be mutually beneficial. So they could use a library, you know, when they have overflow like concerts or parent-teacher conferences, and then we could use the library or the parking across the street when the library has maybe a big event and overflow. So I think those are some considerations, and then I just want to have you take a quick look at that drawing that I put together. So why I did this drawing was to show that numbers can be a little bit deceiving. So, first of all the boxes here represent a house. And those white houses are the average size house in Wisconsin, which is 1669 square feet. Putting them on that lot along with the library brings you to about 18 houses if you go with 109 parking stalls. Now, for every 6 stalls that you reduce 1 house. So if we bring it down to the 400 number, we're going to be reducing by 2 houses. And that's significant. I mean, if you think of the houses going around the block, we don't want to have more houses in terms of pavement in the middle of a residential block. So I think this is very helpful for us to visualize that we do need to reduce parking, and I'm very thankful that you are all thinking along those lines. And in summary, I just want to say that when we went through the visioning, everyone kept saying 21st century library, a library built for the future, a library that meets our needs. And by doing this tonight, by all of us re-examining the parking, that's what we're doing. We are building for the future, and we're not building for the past. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Rain. Candy, anybody else?
That is all of
Okay.
Yellowstone.
Oh, Mike Slavely would like to speak.
I'm Mike Slavny, your almost retired city planning consultant. This discussion has been excellent. The points raised by the trustees have been spot on in terms of where the parking trends are going. When we adopted the new code in 2008, we reduced the parking requirement from 1 space per 150 square feet to 1 space per 300. And we did that not only for institutional uses, but for retail, professional service, and related kinds of office uses. We cut the requirement in half. So the effort that we're going through was not initiated by the crisis at the library. It was based on your city, village planners' desire to keep the standards current and to look at things like warming and stormwater and healthy lifestyles and sustainability and the long term in general, and all of the comments we've heard are in those directions. I want to point out just a few more things. In the current ordinance, we allow shared parking. We were the first community in Dane County to do that across the board. No special permission needed on the part of the village. We allowed delayed paving. If your site plan shows the required parking spaces, you don't have to pave them until they're needed. Our ordinance requires bike parking. The ordinance imposes a parking maximum, which was brought up here. We have a parking maximum. You can't exceed 150% of the parking requirement unless you get village permission to do so. And then in this current version, one change that was made we haven't talked about is we allow a parking study to potentially demonstrate that the required number of spaces can be further reduced. And I think the best example of that with the concept we have with the library is the drive-through will reduce the parking requirement by between 10 and 16 parking spaces. Because there's no need to park, and you can drive through and drop off and or pick up books. And you were all mentioning these issues, so I feel this discussion is going in the right direction. The Plan Commission has, opened that door, and forgive them if they dive into the numbers and want to do the math, because we've got a very highly qualified Plan Commission in terms of most of them are professionally involved with development. So I see where they're coming from in terms of wanting to do the calculations. I'm fine with the 1 space per 400, but I want to recognize the other work the Plan Commission has done on the other land uses and reducing those numbers specifically. And I would term this under kind of the general trend of right-sizing infrastructure, because there are other priorities in the community that are becoming more and more important, other than making sure we can fit all of the cars needed for the peak hour of use on the peak day of use during the year. So I think everything that's been said tonight reflects the work the Plan Commission has done in the past and what they recognize, and I'm fine with the 1 per 400 myself. Thank you.
Yeah, Matt.
I just wanted to mention, I do have a technical a comment regarding the provision in the draft ordinance that would allow for a deviation from the standard based on a parking study. So at whatever the appropriate time is, I'll just share that with the
Okay.
board.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Does anybody have any questions for me?
I do, if that's all right. So you said you're fine with the one parking space per 400 square feet for the library. Is there any reason we can't do that across the board where it says one for 350? We could just make it one for 400. It's still within the national norms,
So
right?
I wrote that code for
Yeah.
Fort Atkinson.
Okay.
So yes, I'm comfortable with the 1 per 400
Okay, thank you.
for the retail and the office uses as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just a comment. Mike, thank you for your work on this.
All right, it's back to us. So Martin, should we take care of the, suspend the rules first? The first and second readings? Should we get that out of the way first?
You can.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's get a motion to suspend the rules and waive the first and second readings of the ordinance. Let's take care of that first. Can I get a motion? Amanda and Luke? Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right. Then we are on a motion or discussion, however we want to proceed. Ultimately, we're gonna probably have a motion.
Can I, oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, do we want to consider the library separately, or should we do a motion for all of the ordinances? I mean, I'm trying to get the temperature of the board here, because
Can-
I could make one for the library, and then we
Can
can
we do the
discuss the
library
rest.
separate?
Well, you have,
Matt?
I mean, I'm trying to see, you have before you tonight a draft ordinance.
Yeah.
So, and I wasn't involved deeply in the ordinance, so, I mean, I'm not sure what it would mean to try and pull the library out. I'm not, I mean, so what you need, when you're voting on an ordinance, you can either move approval of the ordinance as it's drafted, or you could start looking at amendments, I suppose. Maybe
So-
Mike can help on that.
Yeah, the library is co-listed with museums as an individual kind of group of land uses. So I feel it's completely appropriate to deal with that category, library/museum.
Okay. Yep, Mike?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we accept to amend the ordinance for the library to be one space for every 400
And I'll
gross
second
square
that.
feet.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And Candy, I'm gonna say no on that.
Can I just ask, can someone direct me to the language in the ordinance that is proposed to be amended?
So 1706, 300 institutional land uses. Indoor institutional.
C2E, library or museum. So the
Yes.
proposed amendment is to change that reference to 350 there to 400.
Correct.
Okay.
So the motion does pass, okay? All right, so where are we going next?
Can I just share my
Yeah.
technical, just so you know
Yep.
what it is? I'm not sure how it'll affect people's thinking, but section 6 of this draft ordinance right now includes a provision that says deviations from minimum parking requirements. And it says a parking study must be completed and submitted by the applicant, period. I think the intent there is probably to say a parking study may be completed and submitted, not that it must be. And then it says, based upon the findings of the parking study, deviations from the minimum parking requirements of this ordinance can be applied on a case-by-case basis as determined by the Plan Commission. And I have a concern about that kind of provision, because what it does is it gives the Plan Commission unfettered discretion to change the standard with no guidance whatsoever in the ordinance. And that's essentially a kind of a delegation of authority to the Plan Commission to do whatever you want. And that's not legally appropriate. If there's a desire to, I mean, there are a variety of tools available already to do something like this. So, one, without putting anything in the ordinance, one possibility is a variance. And then you go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and seek a variance. Not that it's easy to get a variance, but that avenue's available. Another available avenue already, without this kind of language, is plan development. If you want relief from the standards in the ordinance, then you can seek approval through the plan development zoning process, which already allows the village board, based on a recommendation from the Plan Commission and going through a public hearing process, to allow for deviations from standards. But that's a legislative decision that you're making on a case-by-case basis. And so that is available now. And so this is, it looks like an attempt to say, well, we're gonna build into this ordinance a process where someone can ask for permission from the Plan Commission to deviate from the standard. We wanna see a study, but it doesn't say anything about what that study needs to look like, what it needs to address, who needs to do it. It just says you need a study and then whatever the Plan Commission wants to do, and I really would recommend against that approach. If you wanna build a special procedure in that allows for deviation from the standard, it would be analogous to like a conditional use permit process, which is reminiscent of Act 67, which some of you may have heard me talk about before, but it's complicated, it requires standards, it requires a hearing, and evidence to support the decision. And so I personally think it's unnecessary. You already have other tools available. I think the best tool available probably is a plan development. If Mike has any other comments, I'd be open to hearing.
I would agree that a plan development provides more ability to approve or deny that kind of a request based on the facts presented than a conditional use approach would. And I certainly accept the village attorney's suggestion about his concern.
So Matt, what are you?
My recommendation would
Take it
be
out?
to delete section 6.
Okay.
That section, it says, section 6, what is that, section 17-704, that part of section 6
I would
or
take
the
out
whole
the
thing?
entirety of section 6, which says that it's amending section 17-704 sub 7A3 with that
Oh,
highlighted
that's-
language. Take out all that
Okay.
highlighted language.
Okay. I'll make that motion, we can talk about it.
Second.
Okay, Mike second.
Now, let's, hold on here. So, are we just talking about this piece, or are we supposed to be talking about the whole ordinance?
Well,
now?
so here's what's happened so far. I don't think we ever had a motion to approve the ordinance. I think we had.
Not yet, no.
We had a motion to remove or to modify that one.
Correct.
And so probably procedurally, the best way to proceed would have been to have a main motion, which is to adopt the ordinance, and then to start working on amendments, but we didn't go that way, so, but I can work with that. So right now, what you have is procedurally a little bit, I think maybe the cleanest thing to do would be for someone to make a motion to adopt the ordinance with that first language change that was already approved by you all, that 350 to 400. Get that on the table, okay? Step 1. Step 2, then you can look at whether somebody wants to make an additional motion to delete section 6. Did y'all follow that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, who wants to do it?
So I'll make the motion to adopt the parking ordinances as presented, with the exception of the change we already voted on for the library and museum institutions.
I'll second.
Candy, you good with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
All right, so we're really talking about, are we talking about 6?
So now you have, right now, you have a main motion, which is to Get that motion, it's been made and seconded. Okay, so that's on the table. Now someone could offer an amendment.
So, okay, so then I make a motion to remove section 6 from the proposed ordinance changes.
Seconded.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Now that's before you for discussion.
Any discussion?
I think Matt's comments made sense to me.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
All right, now Matt, what,
Now,
the
now
rest
the
of it?
main motion is before you, which is to adopt the ordinance with that amendment having been adopted.
But we could also do more amendments at this time also.
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
So, I got some extended comments here, so I please ask you to bear with me. I want to thank the staff and the planning commission members and Mike for putting in the time on this. I know a lot of effort's gone into it. And I think we've ended up in a good direction where we're reducing parking across the village as a whole. I think that's a step in the right direction. I had some conversation or communication with Mike via email, where I asked him where he got his data and how this was backed up. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to do my best to be accurate on this. Mike stated that the ordinances for Fort Atkinson that was used as the foundation for what we're doing today, what we're looking at today, was based on three main areas of data. One was the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, which assembles information from across the country, communities' experience on how much traffic and things are to different types of buildings and institutions. Another was building and fire protection codes. And then Mike cited professional evidence gathered in 35 years of writing and administrating zoning codes, combined with experience of professional planning staff and communities that Mike and Vandewell and Associates have written codes for. This resulted in thousands of hours of real-life observation as to whether parking requirements are resulting in shortfalls or surpluses, if I stated that correctly. So much so that I know in a meeting that it may have been a throw-off term from you, but everyone seemed to like it. You referred to this as a de facto national standard. Now, everyone here knows I've been in favor of reducing parking at the library, but it's more than that. I think we have too much parking in this village in general, and I think it works against us and makes a less attractive community. So what I did yesterday was I actually wanted to get an idea of what the new ordinance proposal did. And I ended up starting to look at it, and then I ended up deciding, well, I'll create a spreadsheet, and then it became a bigger spreadsheet. And eventually it became this spreadsheet here, which I know the board has in front of you, but if anyone out there wants a copy, Candy's got them over there, and you're more than welcome. I've printed enough of these. But I wanted to go through this for a minute because it was eye-opening to me. So the first column here, description, is just all the categories we have in the proposed ordinance for parking, okay? And the second column is what we're proposing doing for that. So how many parking spots do we need per gross square foot, et cetera, et cetera. The third column compares it to our existing ordinance, and what struck me here is the yellowed in areas where we're actually increasing parking, sometimes even doubling it for certain categories of buildings like duplexes. Okay, that surprised me. I don't know why we're doubling, but it seemed like quite a bit of growth. Okay, the third or the fourth column is Fort Atkinson's, or national standard or whatever, but it's the Fort Atkinson code that Mike assembled based on hard data, okay? And now in the fifth column, I compare our proposed ordinance to the Fort Atkinson ordinance, which was built on hard data. And I highlighted in yellow for you all the places that we exceed or have an overage of parking over what's recommended for Fort Atkinson, and apparently that they've lived well with. Okay? 3/4 of our categories, we have more parking required. Half of those categories, we have significantly more parking required. The final column in here is costs. And this was based on $5,000, which I think is a more or less, from what I've been told, I'm not a construction person, but is more or less the standard or a ballpark figure for what surface parking costs. And with the figures I've seen, if you put it in a garage, it's $25,000 a stall. If you put it underground, it's $40,000 a stall. So these are potentially, I mean, in a one-off house where you're just building this, not a big cost, but it does increase the house a little bit. If you move to larger projects, this gets significant. The one I want to look at, and we have a great example tonight, which I know is the next item on this agenda, which is the North Point development for affordable housing, which I think is a great project from everything I've seen about it. What that projects is 50 units, with the bulk of them being affordable housing. Okay? There's 15 one-bedroom units, there's 23 two-bedroom units, there's 12 three-bedroom units. Okay? Our new ordinance will require, our new ordinance, not the old one would require more, but the new ordinance as written would require 99 parking stalls. The Fort Atkinson proposal would require 75 parking stalls. So 24 difference. So on a surface lot, if you were putting all these things on the surface, that's $120,000, which is not chump change, but probably not make or break for this project either. But because they're building a dense development, they don't have enough surface area to actually put all the parking on the surface. So what North Point Development is doing is they're burying a good chunk of their parking underground at $40,000 a stall. So now that's $960,000 that we are adding to the cost of that project for those 24 stalls. $960,000 for 50 units, or $19,200 each for our low-cost, affordable housing units that we are tacking on top to make it less affordable and less accessible to people in Dane County. So these parking numbers have real-world consequences that impact our community negatively. They increase building costs, they increase rents and mortgage and maintenance costs, they increase costs of our goods and services when our businesses pass the building costs on to us. They make our community less affordable and less diverse by excluding people with limited incomes. So, in the Housing Affordability Report, which Vanderwall and Associates and Elise put together, and it's an excellent read, I really commend you on that report, it states, any individual or family with an income below $69,700 cannot afford the monthly median owner-occupied cost for homes with a mortgage. And any individual or family with an income below $33,000 cannot afford the median monthly rent in the village. In Dane County, nearly 25% of households could not afford to live in Oregon, which speaks to your concerns about senior housing and, within this community. So parking contributes to sprawl. It increases the miles of roads we have to maintain, the miles of sewers, the miles of water mains. It increases our taxes and fees on our residents. It makes our community less affordable. It makes our community hotter with the urban heat environments that pavement just radiates in the summer, increases water runoff, increases pollution in our waters. It makes our community less walkable, more costly to serve with, hopefully, public transit at some point. It makes building in Oregon more expensive than building in communities around us that have adopted less requirements for parking. And therefore undercuts the very growth that we need to fund the generational projects like the library and the senior center and the sewage plants and all the other expenses that are coming into our community. Requiring unneeded excess parking undercuts the strategic goals that we're going to be voting on later tonight. It undercuts environmental sustainability. It makes our community less walkable. It undercuts affordable housing. It undercuts diversity. If we're serious about our strategic goals and want other people to take them seriously, we should be passing ordinances that support our goals and don't undercut them. Fort Atkinson's a community that's only 17% bigger than Oregon. It has similar demographics to us. It's similar enough to Oregon that its ordinances should be able to apply to us as well. And yet somehow we're requiring a whole lot more parking here. And I can tell you how it happens. We had a situation here tonight, I'm sorry, Randy, but I'm going to use it as an example, where we compromise. Okay, so you want 350, I want 400, well, let's meet in the middle, or I feel comfortable with 1.5 spots, but you want 2, I'll give you 2. Well, that works really well, and my apologies, Randy, but that works really well in getting a board to work together and getting people to work together. But things like this should be data-driven, not driven by compromise, and not driven by opinion. It should be driven by cold, hard facts. We fight against COVID with data. We fight against climate change with data. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to get on an airplane that was designed with opinion and compromise. It just doesn't make sense. Our parking should be the same way. So, national data on parking indicates surveys show 1/4 to 1/3 of parking spaces are consistently empty in our country. Millennials are not, traffic or transportation preferences are changing. Millennials are not driving as much. There's Uber, there's car sharing services, we've got driverless cars in the future, retail delivery services and ordering from Amazon is driving down people's trips to stores. Global warming will almost certainly result in Dane County emphasizing mass transit. I mean, this is one of the most liberal counties in the state. I can't imagine that they wouldn't. Green Street Advisors, which is a commercial real estate advisory firm, lost my thought here, analyzed what it called a transportation revolution. And they came up with, that includes ride-hailing services, driverless cars, et cetera. And they've estimated that U.S. parking needs could decline by 50% or more in the next 30 years. Doug Bigby, who's the president of the National Multifamily Housing Council, which is an apartment trade association in Washington, stated, in the old days, you built an apartment, expected it needed 2 cars. Those parking ratios are outdated and no longer valid in any jurisdiction. Fort Atkinson's code, and I commend Vandewall and Associates and Mike on this, was based on hard data. I've heard many times from village staff regarding parking issues that we need to treat the public sector the same way we treat the private sector and the number of spots we require, et cetera. We're not doing that in this ordinance. This is no longer consistent. We're changing them from thing to thing because somebody had an opinion that we needed more parking for this and less for that. We just voted it out, but we had a requirement that anyone who had wanted to make a change to the ordinance would have to do a study, et cetera, with hard data. but we don't require that of ourselves when we're writing this. So as a result, I'm kind of torn. I was going to propose that we kick this back to the planning commission. And I might still do that, but I'm just thinking at this point that I'm going to propose that we accept the Fort Atkinson standards across the board as applying to our community as well, that it works well enough in the sister community with the same demographics and size of our community. And so I would like to see all the numbers in this ordinance adjusted to reflect Fort Atkinson's numbers. Thank you.
Is that a motion, or are you just
That
saying?
is a motion.
That's.
I move that we change all numbers in this report to reflect the numbers in the original Fort Atkinson ordinances.
Yeah,
As
Matt.
backed by
Matt's got
David.
it.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm not sure how many changes we're talking about, but it's probably quite a few. So I guess my question would be, my thought is that it might make more sense, if you don't want to refer it to the plan commission, to refer it to staff with direction to make those changes and bring it back, so that otherwise we would need to go through and identify each section of the draft where there's a change and work through that here tonight, so that you could actually vote on an ordinance that has, that's in proper form. So I think the easiest thing to do would be the motion would be to refer it to staff with direction to make the changes that you're requesting and bring it back for review at your next meeting. Or the alternative is to try and, instead of just saying, I want to make all these changes, let's go through it line by line and do it that way.
Okay, I would propose what you said, which is I would like to direct this back to staff to make the changes, to bring this into line with the parking standards for Fort Atkinson.
I'll second that for
Second.
discussion, or Amanda can.
Yeah, I don't care. One of us,
All
but
right,
Jerry or me.
Any other discussion?
If I understand what your point was, Mike, that will result in less required parking.
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to define that.
Yep, Amanda?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I like this idea a lot. For decades, Oregon has been considered a bedroom community. And you really didn't live here unless you had a vehicle. And we're trying to grow and not be a bedroom community any longer. So we're gonna have some growing pains. This is gonna be a big change, I think, for a lot of people. And I think it's a good change. It's not without some pains, though. But the whole point is that we're changing the character of our village, and we're changing it for the better, I think, to be more inclusive. And that's why I think we should do this. I think we need a big, bold change, and you're gonna see more changes. Public transportation is gonna ease that, and maybe, e-bikes around town or whatever. We'll figure this out, but I think this is a great jumping off point, so.
Okay. So Matt, let's restate this
Okay,
too.
Yeah, so, and then I have an additional issue I want to just present and maybe get Mike's input on, because he's been involved in the process more than I have. So the suggestion was to move to refer the ordinance
Mhm,
to
to
staff
staff.
with direction to make the changes necessary so that the village's parking requirements are consistent with those reflected in the Fort Atkinson code. That's the motion as I understand it.
Correct.
But here's my question. Mike, was the notice of the public hearing that was given for this, and there was a public hearing at the Plan Commission, I assume, on the proposed ordinance, was that notice of the changes broad enough so that the public would have had notice that the range of changes that we're talking about would potentially be made by the ordinance that's been under consideration here? Or is this something where the public would not have had notice of the scope of the changes that are now being considered, and there would be a need to have another public hearing.
The, I believe the notice of the public hearing was not broad enough to give the public a heads up that this range of changes was going to be considered. And the reason for that is that the village staff looked at the Fort Atkinson ordinance and then made its recommendation to the Plan Commission using its judgment as to which Fort Atkinson provision should come forward and which shouldn't, which current rules the Village of Oregon has should remain versus which should be modified, but that editing, starting with the village code as it is now and looking at the Fort Atkinson model, was not done at the Plan Commission as much as it was at the village staff level.
So there's kind of a complicated question that I think we have to answer, which is, if, in order to get the board into a position to vote on an ordinance with the range of changes that are now being considered, is there a need for there to be another public hearing? If so, where does that need to be? Does that need to be at the Public Plan Commission, or can that be here? And frankly, I'd like I don't want to get it wrong on that issue, so I would recommend that the motion be to refer the matter back to staff for two things. One, to make the changes necessary to have a draft ordinance that reflects what you'd like to see and have an opportunity to vote on. But also to direct staff, and probably me in particular, to determine procedurally what you need to do to get yourselves into a position to vote on that. Do we need to have another public hearing? If so, how can we get that accomplished? And I can come back to you at a subsequent meeting with my best judgment as to what the answer to that is. But I'm uncomfortable trying to decide right now tonight exactly how to do that.
And the reason why Matt is proposing that is because there's some state law that speaks to if an ordinance is substantially changed at the village board level, that it has to go back for public hearing. And so he's trying to determine the interpretation of that state law.
I do have a question for the village attorney. The issue of library museum parking, however, was evaluated at the public hearing inclusive of the Fort Atkinson standard. And I'm wondering if you would be comfortable with two motions, one that settled the issue of the library museum ratio, and then maybe sent the rest of the standards that are proposed for change back for a new public hearing.
I think I would be comfortable with that approach. My understanding is that the public was well aware of what the issue was with respect to the library and the museum parking standard, and there would be no concern about needing to hold another public hearing on this issue. It's all the other land uses where now there's a discussion of changing standards that people weren't maybe aware that was something that they might see a decision on.
I mean, Matt, I think we covered the library at both of them pretty extensively. But you're right, the other things that have come up tonight, the public has had no input.
Right, so, I mean, a couple ways to go. One would be, I think if I'm understanding what Mike's suggestion or question was, you could vote tonight on the changes that you are ready to vote on tonight, and you're legally in a position to vote on tonight because you've had the hearing and you're ready. And you could get that vote behind you and then direct staff to work on another ordinance that addresses these other changes, and we can figure out procedurally what do we need to do to process that and get it back to you. That would be one way to go. Another way to go would be to say, no, you don't want to vote on even the library change without also addressing the other parking issues. So those are two different paths forward, I think, that you could consider.
Yep. Mike?
Randy, I'd like to suggest that we vote on the library tonight, because I know that the library wants to move forward, and it would give them some number that they can begin moving forward on.
I mean,
So-
Matt, didn't we already do this like twice now
Well,
on
you
the
have-
library?
You have already, you have a motion before you to approve the ordinance with the change to the library standard, the library museum standard. That's a proper motion, that's been through the entire legal process. You could vote on that now, that motion's pending. So what,
We did
right?
that already.
We did it
We
already.
voted
Oh, did
it
you already-
already.
Yeah, we did it already.
So you voted on the amendment.
Yeah, you have not voted on the ordinance yet.
Original, yeah, they haven't, you still have the original motion on the floor.
Right, so pending before you is the motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance with two amendments that have been made. One was to go from 350 to 400 on that one section, and the other was to delete that section that's up on the board there
Oh,
about
right,
deviations.
right.
So right now, the motion before the village board is to adopt that ordinance with those two changes. So that's you could vote on that, but I think the question was, well, then we had further debate and a motion to make a whole bunch of additional changes. And then, so the question was, well, now where are we? I don't think we had a second to that motion, because I interjected and said I'm concerned about how we would go ahead and get all those changes incorporated in the document. But now we have an additional issue, which is, do we need to have a public hearing on those other items?
So actually, I have a motion and a second to refer that ordinance back to staff on the floor as well.
Okay, so that motion was made. All right, so that's the motion in front of you now, to refer this to staff to make those changes. And then I said, well, we're also gonna have to consider whether we need to have a public hearing. So, here's where you could go procedurally. If you wanna, if you'd rather not refer the whole thing back to staff now, and you wanna vote on what you have, and then refer something to staff, then vote that motion down to refer to staff. And then you have the main motion before you. And then somebody can make a new motion to refer something to staff. That would be one way to go.
Let's get the library taken care of. That would be my preference.
I agree.
Yeah.
So the motion that's before you right now is to refer this to staff, so it could be you could vote on that.
So we want to do that. That's a
Yeah.
yes vote would be to refer it to staff.
No, I
All right, Matt, we get people are
Matt said vote
confused
You wanna-
now.
Okay.
You wanna
So
say no?
you vote down the motion to refer this to staff.
Okay, okay.
And then the main motion is before you. The main motion is to adopt this ordinance that's up on the board with the two amendments that have been approved. Once that vote has been taken, and assuming it's adopted, I believe you could still, with the agenda that we have, make a motion to direct staff to do something more, if that's what you want to do. And that something more would be, I suppose, to develop another draft ordinance that reflects the Fort Atkinson standards on other parking issues, and to provide a recommendation as to how to proceed procedurally to bring that back to you so you could vote on it. Do we have to have a public hearing? How do we do that? Where do we do that? My guess is we're gonna have to go back to the Plan Commission on that and say, the village board has directed that we process this and ask them to do it.
All right, so if I'm clear, there's a motion and a second to refer this to staff, and we should vote this, get rid of this, vote it down.
Vote that down if that's not
Okay.
what you wanna do.
So we have a motion and a
Let's do
second
that.
to refer to staff. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, so that's done. Now, Matt, second?
So now now you have the original main motion before you, which is to adopt the ordinance with those two amendments. You
With
can either,
the library and the
Section six.
the parking study.
right,
Yeah.
so you
All
can
right.
either have further discussion on that, you can vote on that, or there could be further amendments.
All right, should we take care of that?
Let's,
Let's somebody
please.
make a motion.
If we
You have a motion.
adopt
All right,
it,
there is
then
one.
we can have a subsequent motion to direct them to
Okay.
make changes.
All right, so we
That's
have a
correct?
motion
Okay.
that we're gonna vote on the ordinance for the change to the library and the deletion of the parking study. Okay, everybody clear?
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now we need a motion to refer back to staff to make changes.
I think the motion is to request that staff prepare another draft ordinance to change the other parking standards to be consistent
With
with
the
Fort Atkinson, and recommend a procedure that would allow the village board to consider that ordinance at a
Okay.
future meeting. We're probably gonna have to have another public hearing on
Yeah,
that.
somebody wanna make motion to
Sure,
that?
I'll make that
Amanda?
motion, yes.
Who wants a second?
I'll
Mike?
second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, think we got it for tonight? Oh. All right. All right, we can go to number 6 is the, let me make sure I got this right. Yes, number 6 is cost reimbursement agreement between North Point Development 2 Corporation and the Village of Oregon for proposed multifamily residential development at 5227 Highway CC. The staff recommendation is to approve as presented. Anybody want to make a motion for that? All right, Amanda, second. Derek, any discussion?
Yeah, I have just a couple things around
All
here.
right, yeah, Derek.
And I'm fully in support of this, and I think it's fantastic that we're working toward affordable housing, but looking at some of these numbers, with the gross rent that's anticipated for some of these people, when you do 30% of the median income in Dane County, you're looking at someone who makes $22,000 a year. For a 3-bedroom, you're looking at $9,648 out of that $22,000 a year, or 43% of their annual income. I think as a village, we kind of have to have a discussion of what we think affordable housing looks like, and go forward from there. And that kind of plays in with senior housing and all the other things
Yeah.
too, because
No, I agree.
having
Yeah.
been down that road myself, it doesn't work.
Okay. Yeah, Amanda.
I have a question for staff here then, or maybe that's Matt or Martin. If let's say we adopted the parking standards, we had the public hearings and we got them in place, would they be in place in time enough to affect the amount of parking for this development, and so that it might affect the pricing a little bit?
So this development's probably gonna use the planned development zoning district,
Oh,
so
okay.
they will probably be requesting parking flexibilities that will work for their project regardless. But certainly, we can share with them what is being discussed, and that will probably be used as a benchmark or a guideline for reviewing their application.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Let's see, unfinished business. Items are for discussion, possible action. 9A is adoption of Village Board of Oregon's 2021-2023 strategic plan and village administrator goals. Staff recommendation is to approve. Martin, do you want to say anything?
No, I
Stand
think,
by itself?
I think we're all done going through this, and now's the time to approve it.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay, second? Luke? Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 10 is new business, we have none. 11, future agenda items. Any board members want anything? Yep, Amanda?
I just want to toss out the idea and see what you guys think about putting on a future agenda, going back to virtual meetings for a while, because of the Delta variant. I just feel like caution is in order. I mean, I know we're all sitting here masked, but I can't, it's a pain. It was really easy to do electronic meetings, so I guess I wanted to see what you guys think about that.
And your question is should you put that on your next agenda for discussion?
Yes, that's the question. Like, is that something you guys are willing to consider, I guess?
To put on the agenda.
Going back to virtual meetings for a while.
I'd consider it.
I'd consider it. I know there were people here tonight that were uncomfortable being in the room.
This is about a future agenda item. I was seeing if people were amenable to talking about at a future meeting, whether or not we should go back to virtual meetings for a while.
Can always talk about it.
All right, we'll put it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
All right, 12 is adjournment. Any motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Jerry, second?
Second.
Derek? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're done.